He said he was ready to move on. So I gave him my heart. I met Adam on a Tuesday afternoon. Rain was falling just enough to make the sidewalk shimmer, and I was standing under the awning of a bookstore, flipping through a used copy of The Bell Jar. He held the door open for me, smiled, and just like that, my life started shifting. He had the kind of presence that made the world slow down. Not loud, not showy, just steady. Like someone who had survived a storm and now knew how to appreciate the quiet. We got coffee that same day, talked for hours. He told me he was divorced. 2 years now, he said. It wasn't bitter, just ran out of love, I guess. He said it like a wound he'd already stitched up. He didn't seem broken, just bruised. I could live with that. So you're ready? I asked softly. To love again? He smiled, but not all the way. I think I am. And I think I'd like to start with you. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why a man who spoke so gently about his ex still wore guilt like cologne. But instead, I gave him my heart, without hesitation. We moved slowly. Dinners turned into weekends. Weekends turned into toothbrushes in his bathroom. He never rushed, never pushed. He made space for me, listened when I talked, touched me like I was made of paper, and he'd just learned origami. I fell, hard. About 3 months in, he told me about Emily. She's not mine biologically, he said. She's my ex-wife's daughter, but I raised her since she was 4. She's 20 now. And are you still close? He nodded. We talk, see each other now and then. I didn't push, because I liked that he was loyal. And back then, I didn't know how deep that loyalty went. The first time I saw her, it wasn't planned. We were at a cafe and she just walked in. Long brown hair, sharp eyes, confidence like armor. She walked right past me, straight to Adam's side. Hey, Dad, she said, and he stood. Hugged her so tightly I thought he might cry. They talked, laughed. Caught up on school, friends, a tattoo she hadn't told her mom about. I sat there like a guest in my own date. She barely looked at me. And when she did, it was with a small, polite nod. The kind you give to someone who won't be around long. After she left, I asked him, she still calls you Dad? Yeah. He smiled softly. She always has. I was there for everything. School plays, doctor visits, heartbreaks. She's lucky to have you. He looked away. No, I'm lucky to have her. I tried to swallow the unease, tried to remind myself it wasn't strange. They were close. That's good, right? But deep inside, I already felt like the outsider. That night, as I laid beside him, his phone buzzed. It was Emily. He turned away to answer it, laughed softly at something she said. His shoulders relaxed. He was happy, but not because of me. He told me he was ready to move on, and I believed him. But now I wonder, did he move on from his ex-wife? Or just from the part of her that wasn't Emily? She called him Dad, but she wasn't his daughter anymore. It wasn't the way she looked at him that bothered me. It was the way he looked at her. Like she was the only piece of his past worth keeping. Like she was the last light in a house full of burned-out rooms. A few weeks after the cafe, he invited me to dinner at his place. Not just us. Emily's coming, he said casually. Thought it'd be good for you two to know each other better. I smiled, even as my stomach flipped. Of course, sounds nice. I spent the afternoon picking out a dress, curling my hair, trying to look like someone you'd want to introduce to someone important. Because that's what Emily was, wasn't she? Important. Not to me, not yet. But to him, she was everything. She arrived late, didn't apologize, walked in like it was still her house, dropped her bag on the counter, opened the fridge without asking and said, you're still buying this almond milk crap? Adam laughed. It's good for you. It's disgusting. Mom would have agreed. That name hit the room like a dropped glass. Mom. Not Emily's mom, not his ex-wife. Just Mom. Still present, still relevant. Still a ghost between us. We sat down to eat. I asked her about school. She answered in one-word replies. I complimented her necklace. She said it was a gift from Adam. And when Adam talked, she leaned in, smiling at every dumb dad joke like he was a rock star. Me? I might as well have been wallpaper. Then at some point I asked, so do you still see your mom often? Emily paused. Sometimes. She's remarried now. She glanced at Adam. It's weird seeing her with someone who isn't him. Adam's smile faltered for a moment. It's been years, Em. Doesn't mean it's not weird. She looked at me finally. Wouldn't you feel the same? If your mom replaced your dad? I blinked. Maybe, but I guess if everyone's happy, happiness isn't always the point. Silence. Even the clink of forks felt too loud. After she left, Adam and I cleaned up in silence. Then I asked the question I'd been holding in my throat since dinner began. You know she's not legally your daughter anymore, right? He froze. What? I mean, after the divorce. You're not her guardian. She's an adult. You don't have to… He cut me off. Don't say it like that. Like what? Like she's disposable. Like she's not mine just because there's no paper saying so. I took a breath. That's not what I meant. I'm just trying to understand where I fit in. Because tonight, I felt like the stranger. He turned to me. You don't have to compete with her. But I do, don't I? Not because I want to. Because you treat her like she's the most important person in your life. She is, Emery. There it was. Plain, unapologetic. No hesitation. You love her more than me. He didn't answer. Didn't deny. Didn't even blink. And somehow that silence said everything. Later that night, I Googled it. Can you love someone else's child more than your partner? The articles were clinical. Dry. They talked about attachment theory, emotional bonding, co-parenting complexities. But none of them said what I really needed to know. What do you do when the love of your life already gave his whole heart away? To someone who never needed to ask for it. He smiled at her like he'd forgotten I was there. It started with little things. An inside joke I didn't understand. A nickname I'd never heard before. A conversation that made me feel like a stranger in my own home. But the worst was the way he looked at her. Like his world lit up when she entered the room. Like she was the memory he never wanted to let go of. And I was the present he tolerated. It was a Saturday morning. I had planned a quiet brunch. Just me and Adam. Fresh croissants, orange juice, his favorite coffee blend. But when I walked into the kitchen, she was already there. Emily, in one of his old t-shirts, hair up, barefoot, laughing. You still remember how to make that cinnamon French toast, huh? Adam grinned. It's muscle memory. You always wanted it burnt on one side. Because you always forgot it on the pan. They both laughed. Like this was still their house. Like I hadn't just stepped in with 2 plates in my hands, uninvited to the joy. I placed the plates on the counter quietly. Neither of them noticed. Later that day, we sat in the living room. I was reading. He was scrolling through his phone. Then he chuckled. She posted it. I looked up. Who? Emily, the photo from this morning. He turned the phone toward me. It was a picture of the French toast. Caption. He still remembers how I like it. Hashtag best dad. Burnt any purpose. My stomach sank. He didn't post anything about our anniversary last month. Didn't even take a photo. But he smiled at this like it was the best moment of his week. I tried to ignore it. Tried to tell myself it was nothing. But later that week, it happened again. We were having dinner with a few of his friends. People I barely knew, but he'd known for years. Someone asked about kids. Do you have any? They said, looking at me. I started to answer. But Adam spoke first. Yeah, one, she's in college now, pre-law. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. Wow, they said. Biological? He hesitated. Not officially, but she's mine. He didn't glance at me, didn't acknowledge the awkwardness. And in that moment, I realized something painful. He never introduced me as someone important, but he always introduced her as his everything. That night, I confronted him. Why didn't you say anything about me at dinner? He frowned. What do you mean? You talked about Emily like she was your daughter, your pride. But when it came to me, you said nothing. He exhaled. It wasn't the time. So when is the time? When do I stop being the woman you're seeing and start being the woman you choose? His silence cut deeper than words. You know what hurts the most? I whispered. Not that you love her, but that I'm always on the outside of it. I'm never part of the moment. I'm always watching you two from behind the glass. He looked guilty, but not sorry. There's a difference. You knew I had a deep bond with her. He said, I never hid that. No, but you also never told me that bond would be stronger than anything we could ever build. That night, I laid in bed beside him. He slept soundly. I didn't. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way he smiled at her. Not like a father, not like a partner, but like a man who had already chosen someone to hold all the light in his life. And it wasn't me. Our love grew cold, but his loyalty to her stayed warm. The distance didn't arrive all at once. It seeped in, like cold air through a cracked window. Slow, subtle, but relentless. He stopped holding my hand when we walked down the street. Stopped texting me goodnight when he worked late. Stopped remembering the little things. Like how I hated cherry in my yogurt or that my mother's birthday was coming. But he never forgot Emily's schedule. One morning I woke up alone. No note, no text. When I called, he answered on the 3rd ring. Sorry, Emily called. Her car wouldn't start. I had to go help. I stared at the empty bed. You didn't even say goodbye. It was early. I didn't want to wake you. Another time I had a presentation, one I'd been working on for weeks. He promised he'd be there. He wasn't. Later that night, I found out he'd been at Emily's dance showcase. She invited me last minute, he said. She was nervous. I couldn't let her down. But you let me down. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. It was just one thing. But it wasn't. It was always one thing. One more moment where I wasn't the priority. One more reminder that loyalty has limits. And I was always on the other side of his. We started sleeping with our backs turned. Started eating in silence. Started speaking in short phrases like coworkers instead of lovers. But when Emily called, his voice softened. His smile returned. He still had energy for her. For conversations that lasted an hour. For favors done without hesitation. I tried to talk about it again. Do you even see me anymore? He blinked. What do you mean? I mean, you don't kiss me like you used to. You don't see me when I walk into a room. But when she calls, you light up. He rubbed his temples. I wish you wouldn't make this into a competition. I laughed, hollow. I'm not making it a competition. You already picked the winner. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Then he said the one thing I'll never forget. You don't understand, Emery. She's family. And I'm what? He didn't answer. I stood up, walked out of the room before I said something unforgivable. Because the truth is, I was never asking him to stop loving her. I was asking him to love me too. That night, I cried in the bathroom with the water running, hoping he wouldn't hear. But even if he did, he wouldn't come in. He hadn't in weeks. I began to wonder, did I walk into this relationship thinking I was the main character when I was just the interim? The placeholder? The soft landing after a crash? Because the warmth he once showed me now lived somewhere else. And I didn't know if it would ever come back. One night, he fell asleep on the couch with his phone in his hand. I picked it up to charge it for him. A message lit up from Emily. Thanks for today, Dad. I don't know what I'd do without you. And his reply? I'll always be here, no matter what. You're my girl. I placed the phone down gently, returned to the bed, laid in the dark beside the man I loved, and mourned the version of him that once loved me back. She asked to move in, and he didn't ask me first. I came home early that day. Presentation got postponed. Rain was pouring. And for once, I just wanted to curl up on the couch with hot tea and a warm body next to mine. Instead, I walked into a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. It's just for a few months, Emily said. Of course, Adam replied, voice low, comforting. You don't even have to ask. You know this is your home too. I froze in the hallway. Keys still in my hand. Heartbeat thudding against my ribs like warning drums. This is your home too. Those 6 words hit harder than any confession of love could have. Because I had lived in this house for a year. Washed its dishes, paid half its rent, folded its laundry. But I had never been told it was mine. Emily's voice was firm. My roommate's leaving and I can't afford the place alone. Besides, school's closer to here. It just makes sense. Adam responded immediately. Of course it does. We'll make space, no problem. No pause. No hesitation. No. Let me talk to Emery first. I stepped into the room. They both turned. Emily looked unbothered. Adam looked surprised. And I looked like a woman who had just realized she was the last to know everything in her own life. What's going on? I asked. Emily spoke before Adam could. I'm moving in. Just like that. Not a question. Not a discussion. A statement. I turned to Adam. You agreed? He nodded slowly. She needs help. It's just temporary. And you didn't think to ask me? It's not permanent, Emery. She's family. I thought you'd understand. Understand what? I snapped. That I'm living with your not really your daughter who hates me, resents me, and looks at me like I stole her place? Emily scoffed. I don't hate you. I turned to her. Then what do you feel? Because every time you walk in, you act like this is still your house and I'm just some long-term guest. Adam stepped between us. This isn't helping. She's already going through a lot. And what about me, Adam? Do I not get to go through anything? Do I not matter enough to be included in decisions about my own home? He looked away. And that was my answer. Later that night, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom we shared. He was folding extra blankets, rearranging space in the guest room. I watched him, arms crossed. Do you even see me anymore? He paused. Of course I do. No, you see her. You see the version of yourself you were when you raised her. But I'm standing here right now, loving you, living with you, and you look through me. He turned, eyes tired, voice flat. She needs me, and I don't. Silence. You said you were ready to move on. You said you were building something with me. I thought I was, he said quietly. That was the moment I knew. He hadn't lied. He just hadn't realized that he'd never left the past at all. She moved in the next week. I helped clear out a closet, placed her name on the mailbox, smiled when she entered the kitchen, pretended the knot in my chest was just a cramp. But every night I lay in bed and wondered when I became the guest in my own life. I found the birthday letter. He wrote her, not me. I wasn't snooping. At least I didn't mean to be. I was cleaning out the drawer in the study, something Adam had said he'd get to eventually. but never did. Loose papers, old tax forms, a faded bookmark from a bookstore that closed 2 years ago, and then a cream-colored envelope tucked beneath a stack of magazines. No name on the front, but I knew the handwriting. I'd memorized it from birthday cards, grocery lists, Post-it notes that once said, "Can't wait to see you tonight." Curiosity is a dangerous thing. I told myself I wouldn't open it. Told myself it wasn't my business. But my name wasn't on it. And deep down, I already knew whose was. I unfolded the letter slowly. Each line felt like a whisper behind my back. Like a conversation I was never meant to hear. "Happy 21st, Em. I still remember when you turned 5 and begged me to buy you a goldfish, even though you cried when it died 3 days later. You made me hold a funeral in the backyard and insisted we play your mom's favorite sad song. That's who you are. Someone who feels everything deeply, who makes everything matter. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Strong, brilliant, stubborn in the best way. You didn't come from me, but you'll always be a part of me. I hope this year brings you everything your heart aches for. And no matter where life takes you, this will always be your home. Love you forever, Dad." My hands trembled. My vision blurred. I sat there, with that letter in my lap, feeling like I had just read a love story, and realized I was the plot twist no one asked for. He'd never written me anything like that. Not for my birthday. Not even in our first year together when everything was still warm and soft and new. I placed the letter back in the envelope, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited. He came home an hour later, kicked off his shoes, loosened his tie. "Hey," he said casually. I didn't respond, just held out the envelope. His smile faded. He took it, paused. "Where did you find this? Does it matter?" Silence. "It's not what you think." "Really?" I said, voice shaking. "Because what I think is, you've never written words like that for me. And I've loved you. Given you everything. Stood beside you through the cold, the silence, the ghost of your past. And still, you saved the best parts of yourself for someone who isn't even yours anymore." He lowered his gaze. "She'll always be mine." That broke me. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. "You keep saying that," I whispered. "And every time you do, I feel myself disappearing a little more." I stood. "You wrote her a letter so full of love it felt like poetry. You remembered things about her I didn't even know. But do you know what my favorite flower is, Adam? Do you know the name of my childhood dog? Have you ever asked me what I hope for 5 years from now?" He didn't answer. "You were ready to start a new life, you said. But all you ever did was bring your old one with you and build a wall around it. And I've been standing outside, knocking, hoping, freezing." He stepped forward. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't have to mean it. You just had to keep choosing her. And you did, over and over." I walked past him, not out the door, not yet. But in that moment, I knew I was already gone. Because love should feel like a hand reaching back when you reach forward. Like a room where your presence warms the air. Like a letter written to you, not one you find by accident. He chose her feelings over mine. Again, I was already numb. The letter had torn something inside me. Not with violence, but with clarity. There's something cruel about knowing the person you love has more tenderness saved for someone else. A week passed. We barely spoke. I stopped trying to cook dinner. He stopped asking where I'd gone. We became two people living under the same roof, sharing silence like a burden. Then came the night Emily cried. It was past 10. I was brushing my teeth when I heard the front door slam. Voices in the living room. Hers frantic, his calm soothing. I stepped out of the bathroom slowly. "What happened?" I asked, my voice low. Emily turned, eyes red. "It's nothing, I don't want to talk about it." Adam rubbed her back. "She had a fight with her mom." "Again?" I murmured. "Can you not?" Emily snapped. "I don't need commentary." I bit my tongue. Turned back toward the hallway. But Adam followed me. "She's upset," he said, as if I'd done something wrong. I didn't say anything. "But the tone..." I stared at him. "Are you really doing this? After everything? After the letter? After the silence? After weeks of pretending I don't exist in your world? You're still choosing her side?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm not choosing sides. She's hurting. So am I, Adam." That stopped him. Only for a second. "You think this is easy for me?" I asked. "Living here? Walking on eggshells in my own home? Watching you light up for someone else while I shrink into corners?" He looked away. And that silence? It was the same as every other time. "She needs stability," he muttered. "And I don't? I've been holding myself together with thread and tape for months, hoping you'd see me. And all I get is, she needs me." "You know what I need, Adam?" I stepped closer. "I need to matter. to someone, to you. But you only know how to give your heart to one person at a time. And she already has all of it. Emily stepped into the hallway then, face unreadable. I can leave if I'm such a problem. This isn't about you, I said, exhausted. It's always about me, isn't it? She snapped. I didn't ask for any of this. No, but you never tried to make space either. She stared at me, and for a brief second, I saw it. The truth. She didn't hate me. She just never saw me as permanent. Adam placed a hand on her shoulder, without thinking, without looking at me. It's okay, Em, you don't have to go anywhere. And just like that, there it was again. The choice. And again, I wasn't it. I walked past them. Behind them, grabbed my jacket, my purse. Where are you going? He called after me. I turned at the door. Somewhere I can breathe. Can we talk later? You always want to talk later, Adam. But later never comes. And I'm done waiting to be seen. I stepped into the night. It was cold, lonely. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like mine. He said, "You'll never understand what she means to me." I stayed at a friend's place that night. No calls, no messages. But I knew he'd reach out. Eventually. He always did. Not because he wanted to fix things, but because he didn't like unfinished endings. The text came at 9:12 the next morning. Can we talk, please? I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I already knew how the conversation would go. Still, I went. We met at the park, neutral ground. Somewhere we'd once walked hand in hand, laughing about something I can't even remember anymore. Back when things were light. Back when I thought I had a place in his heart. He was already sitting on the bench. Coffee in one hand, worry in his eyes. He stood when he saw me. Thanks for coming. I nodded. Didn't sit. Didn't smile. Just waited. I've been thinking. He began. About everything. About what you said. I stayed quiet. I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant to make you feel like you didn't matter. I looked at him then. But I did feel that way. He lowered his gaze. Emily's had a rough life. Her mom left. Her stepdad barely talks to her. I was all she had. I know, I said. I never asked you to stop loving her. But you asked me to choose. Silence. Then I said, no, Adam, I asked you to see me, to make room, to treat me like I wasn't just a guest in your memories. He exhaled slowly. You'll never understand what she means to me. There it was. The sentence I knew would come. But hearing it out loud felt like a door closing behind me. You're right, I said softly. I'll never understand. Because I didn't grow up with her. Because I didn't bury goldfish with her in the backyard. Because I wasn't there when she got her first heartbreak or scraped her knees or lost her mom. But I was here, in this chapter, with you. And you never even tried to write me in. He stepped forward. Emery? No. You gave her all the pages. You left me scribbled in the margins. He looked pained, but not surprised. I do care about you, he said, but not enough. It's just different. I smiled sadly. Love isn't supposed to be a contest, Adam. But you made it one. And you picked her. Even when I wasn't playing, we stood in silence. The kind that hurts more than shouting ever could. So what now? He asked finally. I looked up at the sky. Gray. Still. Heavy with something that never fell. Now, you go home, to your family. And I go find mine. Even if it's just me and quiet and peace I had to earn. I turned to leave. He didn't stop me. He couldn't. Because for the first time, he finally let me go. I left and he still called her my only girl. I didn't take much when I left. Just a suitcase. A box of books. And the kind of silence that follows someone who's done begging to be chosen. I found a small studio apartment downtown. No shared closet, no familiar coffee mugs, just me. And it was so quiet. Too quiet at first, but honest. And that mattered more. I didn't block Adam, didn't delete his number, didn't unfriend him. Not because I wanted him back, but because erasing someone doesn't undo the way they made you feel. 2 weeks later, I opened Instagram without thinking. And there it was. A photo. Adam and Emily, side by side at a dinner table, smiling. Her birthday. Again. His caption read, "Happy birthday to my only girl. No matter where life takes us, you'll always be my heart. Proud Dad and forever." My breath caught. Not from jealousy, not from spite, but from finality. My only girl. That line echoed in my chest louder than any fight we ever had. It confirmed what I already knew. What he had shown me over and over. Now, he'd said it. I wasn't angry. I was tired. Tired of hoping that one day I would be loved like that. Tired of telling myself, I understand. Tired of feeling like second best in a game I didn't sign up to play. I closed the app, turned off my phone, made tea, and for the first time let myself cry not because I missed him, but because I had missed myself for too long. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, "She was his girl, but now I finally get to be mine." I started running in the mornings, something I'd always wanted to do but never did when I was with him. He hated waking up early. Now, the sunrise became my companion, my proof that every day starts over, even me. One morning as I laced my shoes, a memory flashed. Emily laughing in the kitchen, Adam watching her like she hung the moon, and me pretending that wasn't the moment I disappeared. But I didn't cry, not this time, because now, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who lost. I saw the woman who let go, and that was braver than staying. He never came back, but I built a life where I was first. He never called again. Not after I left. Not after I saw the post. Not even when mutual friends asked what had happened. He didn't try to fix it. And strangely, that hurt less than I thought it would. Because by then, I already knew. He had never believed I needed fixing, just replacing. The silence that used to suffocate me now became space I could finally breathe in. I learned how to fill it, not with new love, not with distraction, but with presence, with me. I planted herbs on my windowsill, started journaling every night, woke up early, ran until the world made sense again. Bit by bit, I stitched myself back together, not to return to who I was, but to become someone who would never again wait for crumbs of affection. One day, while clearing out my closet, I found a box I'd forgotten about. Inside, a photo of me and Adam from a trip upstate. We were smiling. I looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in spirit, like a woman trying to fit into a space that was already taken. I placed the photo back inside, closed the box, and didn't look back. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. So did I. I enrolled in a writing course, wrote an essay titled, "What Love Feels Like When It's Not Yours." It got published. Someone emailed me after reading it. "Thank you for writing what I couldn't say out loud." And for the first time, I realized that my pain had become purpose. That my story, even the parts that broke me, could help others find their voice too. A year after I left, I passed by the cafe where Adam and I had our first date. I didn't go in, just smiled softly, pressed my hand to the glass, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me who I'll never be again." I didn't hate him, not anymore. He gave what he had. But what he had was never for me. And now I had something better. A life where I'm not waiting to be seen. A life where I am first, because I put myself there. I still think of Emily sometimes. Not with resentment, but with quiet understanding. She never stole him from me. She simply held a part of him that was never mine to begin with. And that's okay, because now I've reclaimed every part of me he never saw. There's a new man in my life now. He doesn't write grand poems or post pictures every day, but he listens. He sees me, not as a second choice, not as a compromise, but as the whole story. And when he holds my hand, I don't feel like I'm trying to hold on to something slipping away. I feel home. So no, he never came back, but I didn't need him to, because I finally realized the most important love story I'll ever live is the one I write with myself. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.